you're so sensitive about language and you can't be like that. I can be however I want to be, and so can you. And you can set boundaries for yourself, for your mental, physical, and emotional health and peace with anybody, including the person that you're paying to deliver your baby. Just recently, somebody commented on my video and said that I was leading women astray because I mentioned the word pain-free birth. And she followed up her comment to say, women should expect that labor should be excruciating. And I'm sorry, but there will never be a day that I agree with that statement. Labor does not have to be excruciating. There is no rite of passage that women have to go through to experience childbirth or to have a baby. Pain is normal with this experience of childbirth. However, it does not have to be every single woman's experience. It has not been every single woman's experience. It was not my experience with every single one of my births, and it is not the experience of every single one of my clients. Hearing comments like that, frankly, just make women even more scared of birth than they already are because of social media, other people's stories, TV, movies. So in this video, I want to talk about why you are being programmed to be afraid of birth and how we can work through that so that you can have an enjoyable, beautiful, and peaceful experience in your labor. Hey mama, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chanel. I am a wife. I am a mama of almost 4. I am a doula. And on this channel, you are going to get a lot of resources on how to have an experience of birth that is both peaceful, positive, and empowering between you and your partner. A lot of the clients that I work with are families who want to do this together. They don't necessarily want another body in the room, but they want to have the knowledge and the support and the resources and tools to do what they want to do and to have the birth that they desire. So you will find a lot of videos on this channel about that, giving you and your partner the tools to have the birth that you desire. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, make sure to hit that subscribe button below and join our family. I want to give you 4 different ways that you are being programmed to be afraid of birth and 4 different ways that you can reprogram your mind and your body to be prepared, excited, and expectant of a positive birth experience. The first way that you're being programmed to be afraid of birth is by the media. I don't know how many movies, how many social media posts, how many advertisements come out about childbirth. And not to say that any of those videos or scenes in a movie are not true. However, the majority of them are not. What is wrong with our society is that we have really made birth seem like this super speedy, super painful, impossible, sweating, breathing, crazy experience that women cannot handle. But if you really sit down and you think about it, we have been doing this since the beginning of time. Life was created from the woman. So if we weren't able to do this, we would not live in the society that we're in today. People would not continue to have multiple children if they felt like they were dying every single time. And yes, there are resources and there are tools like epidurals, pain management techniques, and resources that you can use to make the experience less painful, feeling free, or whatever the case may be. But that is not every single woman's experience. And frankly, if we were to truly rely on the scenes of movies, the way that the media talks about birth, even some of the stories that we hear from our friends and family or what we're seeing on social media, we would probably not be having kids. So what I encourage you to do is 1, understand that this is entertainment. If birth looked beautiful and it was so nice and so peaceful, like it wouldn't be entertaining because it's entertainment. So I want you to know and understand that what you're seeing on TV, while it's not 100% not going to be somebody's experience, I would say about 95% of women are not going to experience what you see on TV. We are not sweating profusely to where we're like dripping sweat. We are not losing our breath. And also for the majority of us, it doesn't happen where it's like your water breaks and oh my gosh, we have to rush to the hospital, my baby's gonna come out right away. That's not the case. What you'll realize once you get educated is that if your water does break, like we see in the movies, and everybody's expecting to happen when the birth process begins, usually moms are not even having contractions at that point. They're waiting for this whole process to start. And so what I encourage you to do is you need to remove yourself from that sort of media until you are knowledgeable to be able to handle it. As a first-time mama, it is very unlikely that you're going to watch a movie while you're pregnant and not have some sort of feeling or emotional response to whatever you're seeing on TV. The solution to overcoming this programming and reprogramming your mind to whatever's on the media is by getting knowledge and getting educated on what is actually true about this birthing process. Until you do that, you might need to start removing yourself from media sources and media outlets. That could be really unfollowing a lot of pages. That could be not watching TV or any movies with birth scenes. That could be not going to YouTube videos and listening to other people's birth stories until you understand the process of birth enough to where you look at those scenes very differently. When I prepare my clients, I'm like, okay, look, y'all, we're gonna stay off Google. Until we get knowledgeable, we're gonna stay off Dr. Google and even YouTube University, because the reality is, even though you're watching this video on YouTube, there's some clickbait out there. And when you're not watching intentional, educational, resourceful videos, you're probably listening to somebody's story and you have no idea how that story is going to turn out or how that's going to impact you emotionally and mentally about your own journey. So I encourage you to reprogram your brain. You need to only be filtering in information that is actually going to be useful and empowering and uplifting for you. That is not removing yourself from any truths or things or complications that can happen from pregnancy or birth, because those things are very real too. But you have to learn about them in a unbiased, knowledgeable, resourceful way, instead of hearing about these complications and scary things happening through somebody's story with no solution. It's okay that things change in birth. Complications can arise, but what you have to understand to reprogram, to reduce yourself from fear, is that you can handle those changes and you can handle those complications if you know how. But listening to somebody's story does not teach you the know-how. The second way that you're being programmed to be scared about birth is people's stories. We kind of talked about that just now. But if you are constantly hearing a bunch of negative birth stories, which, to be very honest, there's probably a lot more negative birth stories out there than there are positive ones, because most people don't prepare. But listening to people's stories is not going to help you become fearless, empowered, or even confident for birth. Because for some reason, when we get pregnant, everybody flocks to us with their stories. Like, for some reason, everybody wants to tell us about their experience in birth and how terrible it was, how excruciating it was, and now you won't get a gold star for not using an epidural. This is no knock against epidurals. This is no knock against pain medication. You must do what feels best for you. However, I don't like the narrative out there that moms should not experience any challenge when it comes to labor, or that it's a bad thing if we experience pain, or if it's a bad thing that our labor is long, or that we have to work hard. Like, those are all really, really good things with this process, because you're bringing life into this world, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. We shouldn't be afraid of hard work, because you've done hard work and you've done hard things, and you can do this too. But what I really don't like is how women and families somehow think it's appropriate to flock to a new mom and tell them all the crazy, scary things about their birth in a way to prepare them for the experience. I'm sorry, but after having almost 4 children, that is not helpful. Why don't you tell me, if you're going to share with me your story, why don't you tell me what you wish you would have known, what you wish could have gone differently, what you wish I would know so that I could avoid the same outcome as you, instead of telling me your really scary story with expectation that mine's going to look like yours. Every single birth story is different. And if you listen to those stories, and I've worked with hundreds of clients to know this, the majority of my clients, they hold on to the negative ones. They could hear 10 positive stories and 3 negative ones, and all I hear about are the negative ones, or the scary story that they saw on YouTube or on Instagram or on TikTok or whatever the case may be. That is not helpful. Naturally, as humans, we're holding on to negative information and holding on as though that's going to be our story over the positive ones. But the reality is, there's a lot of women out there, including myself, including my clients, who have had very, very beautiful positive experiences. And we have fallen in love with this process. But we've also had to filter out the stories. If you know that people are flocking to you, you might have to say, hey, I'm not in a space to hear any stories right now. There's no disrespect, like no hard feelings, but I'm really trying to protect my peace. And until you get educated, those stories may not be helpful for you. A lot of my clients, we have to get ourselves into like a little bubble for a little bit until we get knowledgeable enough to be able to hear those. And then once we hear those things, we're like, oh, this is what happened. This is what happened. Oh, I would have done this differently. And not to say the outcome for you would have been any different either. Who knows? But at least you know that you would navigate it differently than maybe that other person did, because they might not have had the same knowledge and education as you. So here's the solution. How do we reprogram ourselves through the stories? Solution number 2 is that you have to protect your peace. You're going to have to close your circle. That may mean who you talk to about your birth, what you share about your birth goals, what kind of experience you want, and who's allowed to be a part of that, even physically a part of that experience and in the room, how you're getting knowledgeable. You're going to have to put yourself in a bubble for a period of time and separate yourself from the negativity, because there's a lot of that out there. And when you can start to become knowledgeable and you can protect this bubble, closing the circle of people who are even allowed to engage with your pregnancy and engage with conversation about your birth, that can completely change your mindset. These moms go on to have really positive birth experiences with their partners because they protected their peace. So I encourage you, as solution number 2, is to close your circle and find your bubble of people who actually can handle what you're trying to prepare for. The third way that you are being programmed to be afraid of birth is probably from your provider. Now, this is not 100% of the people, because I have an absolutely amazing provider who makes me feel so empowered and confident about birth. But that is not most women's experience. In my first pregnancy, I had an OB who was great. We had a great relationship, but when I would start to talk about my actual birth plan and wanting to be unmedicated and have this natural birth, he followed it up by telling me, yeah, 90% of my clients say that, and then they end up getting an epidural. That is a red flag. If your provider is constantly pushing you to consider other options, or to not even like empower you for what your goals are, that is a red flag, and almost making you even more afraid as the person who's supposed to help deliver this child. Now, it is not a problem, and I am not saying it is wrong for anybody to, prepare you or give you their truth of what they have seen in their personal or professional experience. However, you can be honest with somebody without creating doubt. You can be honest with somebody without making them afraid. He could have responded in a way that said, okay, I totally support that. There are other options if you do change your mind. We have epidurals, we have other pain relief medication, but I am here to support you. And if this is what you want, how can I best support you in this process? If you ask for an epidural, do you want me to say no? Or do you want me to give this to you? Like, that would have been a better approach. And I know some people out there, because I've gotten comments about this before, you're so sensitive about language and you can't be like that. I can be however I want to be, and so can you. And you can set boundaries for yourself, for your mental, physical, and emotional health and peace with anybody, including the person that you're paying to deliver your baby. So how do we reprogram ourselves with the situation that we could be in with our provider? Well, one, you could switch providers. I've had women switch providers at 36 weeks, and it's a lot harder to do that later on in the process. But if you start to get to know your provider and interview them very early on with questions, I give all my clients these questions, but asking them their philosophy on birth and like what your birth goals are, and do they align with that, and can they support that? You'll get an idea if this provider is the best person for you. That's step number 1. If you can't, for whatever reason, find another provider. You have to set very firm boundaries with your provider. You can say this, you can't say that. I will tell you if I want something, please do not offer it unless I ask. Going through your birth plan very, very early to make sure that you are equipped. And if that person still, and like this is your only option as a provider, is still giving you a hard time, then you're gonna have to do even more work to become even more confident to labor at home a little bit longer, okay? Because that way you could potentially avoid any interaction with that person or whoever else might be on call at the hospital that day. So you have to make sure that you're doing your part by reprogramming your brain of like, I know what my body's capable of. All of this, if you haven't noticed, is coming back to knowledge. But what you're capable of, what this birthing process looks like, how to labor at home longer, understanding warning signs or red flags that may require you or encourage you to go into the hospital space early, and then how to navigate and advocate in that hospital space. When you can do that and set those boundaries based on the knowledge that you have, you can live confidently and birth confidently within that space. The fourth and final way that you are being programmed to be afraid of birth is a lack of support. You are probably going to the wrong places for the information. You are probably Googling a lot. You're probably following a bunch of doulas or a bunch of midwives or a bunch of providers, and you're trying to piece together this information that will never fit in a puzzle together. One of the ways that we can easily get overwhelmed or fearful about birth is when we don't know what to expect. When you're trying to piece together or like Google or research your way to this experience, trust me from experience, I've done this, you're going to end up more afraid because nothing is lining up and it feels like it's all over the place and you're like pulling information from everywhere. If that is you, you're going to have an uphill battle. And I'm not saying it is impossible to prepare yourself. I am saying that it is a lot harder, and you're probably going to miss something. Because if this is your first time doing this, no matter how many people are around you, it's your experience and you're going to be doing it different than them. So I really encourage you to make sure that you're staying away from Google, because you never know what's going to come up, especially if you're just looking on those first 3 pages. You're going to also probably come across like some stories on social media that are not actually helping you. They could be really beautiful, but not informative. They could be really scary and not informative. You could also be finding information, and then that's leading you down this rabbit hole to make you even more afraid of all of the risks and complications. What most women don't understand is that complications and risks exist for everything. They exist for an epidural, they exist for an unmedicated birth, they exist for a C-section. Like, all of those things exist. And as somebody who has had a C-section, has had an unmedicated home birth, and has also used an epidural before and the use of Pitocin, I can tell you from experience that the information that was given to me on the internet was not actually reliable information, because I'm looking at a title, I'm looking at a short article and not understanding the actual research behind it. So our solution here to reprogramming our brains to not be afraid when it comes to information is to get reliable information. Find somebody who you align with. That could be me in our Work Your Birth program. It could be another doula's program. It could be another childbirth educator's program, whatever that may look like. But find a resource that feels aligned to what you're trying to do and the type of birth that you're trying to have. Because if you can do that, it will bring peace. And what we've seen from research is that the more knowledge somebody has, the more confident they become. And that needs to be from one source. Too many voices, too many noises can really overwhelm you, especially in this process. So you have to have a trusted voice that's going to prepare you for all scenarios for your birth. All right, I said that was going to be short, but I don't actually think that was very short. But I hope that it was helpful. If you do want more information on a step-by-step process on really getting yourself fearless for birth, confident for birth, excited for birth, make sure you check out my Work Your Birth course down below. I am here to support you and give you the step-by-step that you need to make sure that you can walk into your birth confident, feeling at peace, for you and your partner to have the tools that you both need. That is it for me. I will see you on the next video.